advice and opinions heard on the Phil Sandoval Show are for educational purposes only. Now here's licensed marriage and family therapist, Phil Sandoval.
Okay, welcome back from the break, everyone. Welcome back to Immaculate Radio. Listen, in the first segment, what I was saying is that chaos in the world, like what's happening in Texas, and you see these people really suffering greatly. We think about all the other things that have happened in the world that are happening in the world. They offer us a window of opportunity to look at our own lives and realize if the worst thing that happens to me today is a smush bagel, what I don't know if right's the right word, but is it right for me to be mean and nasty today? Is it right for me to hold a grudge against somebody today? Knowing the suffering that really is possible in the world. And I wonder how that type of thought can maybe, with a little reflection, help you to change your attitude to your husband today, or your wife, or your boss, or your child, or your mother, or your brother. That's the stuff. That's the stuff of faith. But it's also the stuff of psychology. It's also the stuff that, like in my profession, that we work with. Understanding why people react the way they do. Why do people think the way they do? That's the stuff of psychology. And we have a wonderful young woman. Her name is Dr. Suzanne Hollman. And she's going to introduce herself here in just a second. But she's director of this ID program, the psychology, the doctorate program at Divine Mercy University. Welcome to the show, Dr. Hollman.
Happy to be here.
Oh, we're so happy. I'm so thrilled to have you on the air with us. Give us a little background. Who are you? What are you about? Where do you come from? Give us a little background about you.
Okay, well, I am affiliated with Divine Mercy University, and more specifically the Institute for the Psychological Sciences, which is a subset, a department within Divine Mercy University, and I direct the master's program in psychology, which is online, and also the doctoral program in clinical psychology, which is on site. I am a clinical psychologist by training, have been a clinical psychologist for approximately 2 decades now, and originally from Cape Town in South Africa, where I also qualified as a psychologist. So that is a quick summary of who I am.
Beautiful. Well, we love it. Listen, on my website at ihradio.com/Phil, you'll see a link to Divine Mercy University. And I'm going to tell you that you hear me on the air all the time, listeners, saying that there's so many universities out there that they're just not very useful, and you worry about sending your kids to university that they're going to be exposed to all kinds of silly things. Divine Mercy University will develop the whole person. You hear me talk about developing the whole person, meaning there is an intellectual aspect to this. And by the way, Dr. Hollman, your programs are setting people up and preparing them for licensure in the field of psychology. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're absolutely correct. So the doctoral program in clinical psychology leads to licensure pretty much in any state in the United States in clinical psychology as a clinical psychologist. And the counseling program that is in the School of Counseling will also lead to licensure. And then the MS in psychology is online. That does not lead to licensure, but the other ones do. And so really our program is very unique in the sense that we integrate theology and Catholic philosophy and Catholic theology with standard clinical psychology, which is a really good thing because we feel we hit the current science, the current research, but then we also integrate 2,000 years of Catholic tradition, philosophy, and experience. We have a very rich Catholic tradition upon which we can draw and that we try to integrate with modern psychology. So we're very much in the faith and reason world where we try to train our students, not just to be good clinical psychologists, but really we see this more as a formation program as opposed to just a training program. So a lot of our students receive spiritual direction. We have a chapel on campus. We have Mass every day. We have spiritual direction available for all the students. We have mission trips. We just came back from Mexico where we did some mission work there. We go to soup kitchens in poor areas in the city. So we like to think of ourselves as a lot more than just a doctoral training program or a master's training program in psychology, but really as trying to make the world a much better place than we found it.
So beautiful. The website for this university is divinemercy.edu. divinemercy.edu. You can go to IH Radio website and find that link there as well. But divinemercy.edu. I want to mention and just reinforce that the master's program, like in the state of California where I'm licensed, in order to practice clinical psychology, you have to hold at least a master's degree. And divinemercy.edu, Divine Mercy University, is providing that master's degree program, which means you have to have an undergraduate degree before that, master's degree in counseling, and they're doing it online. So if you can't travel or don't want to travel, or for many people, like people that are working, for example, it's hard for them to get into face-to-face classes. The master's degree program in counseling and the master's degree in psychology are both offered online at Divine Mercy University. Can you tell us some of the positives about running an online program, Dr. Hollman?
Well, I think the principal advantage is that we're able to reach people, and people are able to connect with us who otherwise might not have been able to. And so we have people from all walks of life, all types of situations, anyone from a missionary in Africa to a parish priest in a rural area, a stay-at-home mom in Nebraska, anyone with an undergraduate degree. And the undergraduate degree does not have to be in psychology. That may surprise some people. We have an overview course that gets people up to speed who do not have undergraduate degrees in psychology. Anyone can really apply and integrate the faith and the science in this particular way without having to live here in Washington. And I think that is a really big advantage for us in terms of getting our mission out there into the world. And it lifts some of the restrictions that we would have otherwise. The doctoral students, yes, they're here and they're on site, and that's a much longer program. But the other two programs are accessible to just about anyone.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. You said something important, Dr. Hollman. You said that you develop the whole person, that you cannot separate, that spiritual aspect of the student with just this clinical, technical aspect of research. How and why is developing the whole person important? Well,
I think that, part of the reason I'm at Divine Mercy University, at the Institute for the Psychological Sciences, is because my psychology training was entirely secular. When I trained, this didn't exist. So I sort of had to do it on my own, bumbling along, quite frankly, reading as many books as I could. But what I found was in my clinical work with clients is that at some point, everyone arrived at the existential questions. Why am I here? What happens to me when I die? How shall I live? And quite frankly, I did not feel prepared always to deal with those questions. And that really made me realize that there's a huge gap in the way that we are training psychologists and counselors right now. And so when I found out about the Institute for the Psychological Sciences, which is what it was named at that time, it really felt to me like they were capturing a piece of the human experience that had been horribly neglected. And I think you were talking about the flooding in Texas. I think these kinds of events really remind us all that we're human, regardless of our status in life, how much money we have, how important we think we are, that at the end of the day, we're all very vulnerable. And at some point, we really need to account for our lives. And what's interesting to me is that I've heard these questions not only from Christians, but from people who have no faith. At the end of the day, everyone has that wish to make sense of things. And often this creates a crisis for people. And we train students to not only be able to deal with the general presentations of depression or anxiety, for example, but also what are the existential questions related to faith and meaning within the Catholic tradition that underlies all of that, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. I mean, I'm listening to you with just my attention glued to what you're saying, because it is that. It really is trying to figure out what it is that we're doing in this life, what's important to us. The psychological aspect of dealing with life is one thing, but what's the whole point of it? I love that. You know, the PsyD program, it's called Doctorate in Psychology, is an online program. I'm sorry, I take that back. Is an in-house program. The other two we can get online. But I want to talk a little bit about, in fact, I think you run that department, right, the PhD program there. It is on-site, meaning people will have to travel there. And I want to encourage people, especially people that are sending younger people into this PhD program, that there will be sacrifices, that you may have to send your child away to, go to the East Coast to study. But listen to this professor here. Listen to what she's saying. Listen to her reason, her faith, her love that she's transmitting to you over the radio waves, and know that she's going to be your child's professor. This is what you're getting into here. This isn't a secular program. This is a science-based program with faith as its foundation. So the PhD program is in-house there on the East Coast. In fact, where exactly are you located on the East Coast, Professor?
We're in Crystal City, and we're about 1.5 miles from the Pentagon. Very close to the airport, so easy to get here.
Doctor, can you stay with us for another segment? Can we chat a little bit more with you?
Sure, no problem.
Okay, great. Listen, let's go off to break. When we get back, we'll talk more about these two programs and offer more information about the programs. We'll be right back.
Be still and know I am here.
I am hope for all who are hopeless. I am eyes for all who long to see.
It's the Phil Sandoval Show on Immaculate Heart Radio with licensed marriage and family therapist Phil Sandoval. Have a question for Phil? Join the conversation now at 888-914-9149. That's 888-914-9149. Now here's Phil Sandoval.
Okay, welcome back from the break, everyone. Welcome to Immaculate Heart Radio. I'm so happy that you're with us. I am so happy personally to be speaking with Dr. Suzanne Hollman. She is associated with Divine Mercy University. She is the director of the PhD program in clinical psychology at the university. But she's talking to us about the university in general and the other programs that are there, like the MS programs. Dr. Hollman, thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. Happy.
Dr. Hollman, Professor, tell us some of the unique aspects of your programs there at Divine Mercy.
Well, I think the commonality that all the programs have is twofold. First of all, it is science and research-based. We do not shy away from the latest research findings in the field of clinical psychology or counseling. Having said that, though, we don't swallow it all whole. We critically evaluate what is coming out of the mainstream research environment, turn it up on its head and analyze it the way any other program would. But I think the second really important aspect, which other programs don't have as far as I can tell, is the integration of Catholic philosophy, Catholic theology. We have courses on Catholic philosophy, Catholic theology. The doctoral students do a course on spiritual maturity. When you sit with a client, you don't just look at their symptoms or their family history, but you also look at how spiritually mature are they. And that course is actually taught by Father Robert Presudi right now, who is a priest and a very well-educated PhD. And so I think that is really the additional piece that just binds everything, that brings it all together. We believe that people are created, that they've fallen, and that they are redeemed. And we don't shy away from people in the fallen state. Having said that, though, we ultimately believe in the potentiality of every single human being to live a life that is filled with God's grace and God's love, and to really maximize who they are as human beings.
Yeah. You know, as you mentioned, the priest that's teaching one of your PhD programs, I recently am reading more about St. Thomas Aquinas, right? And I think about that monk, you know, in these prime universities in his day in Paris. And faith was the basis of science. You know, faith and science were not incompatible. And there's so much in the world today where in the secular universities that they segregate those two things as if they're not overlapping, and they very much are overlapping. I'm really grateful that you're bringing that aspect up, that for us to have faith does not mean that we have to deny reason. In fact, the opposite. Reason and faith go together hand in hand. Beautiful, beautiful point that you're making there. And for parents and grandparents or potential students that are looking for an option of where to go to school, where to send their kids to school, or where to go themselves, these are the types of programs that I talk about. These are the types of programs where you will be exposed to cutting-edge science. Remember, I made a point in the first segment of asking Dr. Hollman, are your programs licensure oriented? And what that means, audience, is that when we're done with this, like if you come back to California or if you're in California, you have to take a state examination or a national examination. And that examination is going to be based on a secular examination of the science that the licensure boards think is important for a clinical psychologist to have or a clinical counselor to have. And so do not think that this program, because it's a Catholic university, is going to shortchange you in that very technical science of psychology. It very much is going to offer that, and you are going to have the right credentials, the right courses in order to pass those exams that you're going to have in whatever state that you're in. Am I right about that, Dr. Hollman?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, we were accredited by the American Psychological Association a year ago for 7 years, which is the highest level of accreditation the APA can give a doctoral program. And we're very proud of that because the APA has very stringent criteria. They sent a site visitors team out of 3 psychologists who came and evaluated us, and they basically were very happy with the program to the extent that they gave us 7 years of APA accreditation. And I think that's a testament to the fact that we... Sorry, go ahead.
No. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for cutting you off. But I really know that there's people that will think this, and they ask me. They'll say, "Hey, Phil, this program is it going to prepare me for licensure?" And what Dr. Hollman is talking to us about is APA, the American Psychological Association. They have accredited this program. That's very, very, very significant.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. It's not an easy thing to get, yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Hollman, tell us a little bit about the profile of students. I'm going to inject this really quickly. For the for the graduate programs, which means you can get a license from these, I encourage people all the time. If you're a retired engineer, if you're a retired plumber, if you're a retired this or priest or nurse, and you have always wanted to get into psychology, these programs are available. You don't have to be 20-something years old to get into these programs. Am I wrong about that, Dr. Hollman?
No, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. Not all of our students are millennials. We have a lot of Gen Xers. We have a few baby boomers as well. Right now, we've got 3 students in the program who are former attorneys. One of them has practiced at a very, very high level at a very big law firm for 25 years. Another one was a patent attorney. That's just 2 examples. There's a lot of people who were veterans in the military who come here after they've left. So we have a lot of veterans who use veteran scholarships to study here, and we also have a lot of priests, and we've had a few religious sisters come through, and then of course we have students who went to anything from a small Catholic school undergraduate to a big state school who come and study here. So, but regardless of that diversity, which we really like because it brings a lot of different perspectives, it's a very tight-knit community and a very supportive community because at the end of the day, we're all working towards the same end goal. And that is wonderful to see.
I love it. Professor, how do you take care of the young kids that are coming out? Like, let's say we do get some 19-year-old, 20-year-old kids that are coming out. They're moving away from their really good families, right? I know working with the universities at different levels, there's often depression and sadness. People are afraid to be away from home. How do you help those young people integrate away from home and into your programs?
We have a very active student life association. We have mentorship programs. Every student has an advisor who keeps an eye on them. And we have the spiritual direction team involved. So I think we have sort of at least a 3-layer net for people moving from elsewhere who are adjusting. Perhaps some of our students have never even been to the East Coast and move here. And we're very aware of who they are and what they need, and we encourage them to reach out. We're small enough to do that. This is not a place where you're going to get lost in the shuffle. Beautiful. This is a place where I know every student by their name, and I'm not the only one. So I think you can rest assured that we like the fact that we're able to do that for our students. We're very student-centered.
Yeah, beautiful. So let's say me, as an individual, if I go out and I run to your, I apply for your PhD program and I get into your program, but I'm a big scaredy cat. I don't want to move away from my comfortable little house here. How does Divine Mercy help me to move out to the East Coast and be in this big mix of the Washington area? How would you do that?
We do everything from connecting students with current students. So, for example, we had a student who did a career change, and we connected that person with someone who also made a career change. The other things we do is we help people with housing. If we have international students, because we do have students from other countries who come study here too, we will connect those students with current students who are also international. So we try to match students up in terms of who's already here. So the students don't only talk to the faculty and the student life staff, but they also talk to students currently in the program, and it's just a little more reassuring to hear from someone, I think, who's gone through that adjustment to see, look, it's possible, and it's more than just possible. I'm actually very happy about the decision I made. And I think it becomes far less daunting. We do everything from, we've kept people's boxes and suitcases for a while to help them adjust, or we'll talk to them more than once. It's a very personalized admissions process. It's not a kind of situation where you just send in your paper application and you never hear from us again until you get admitted. There's a lot that goes on from the time you apply to the time that you actually come here.
Oh, beautiful stuff. Okay, we're about ready to go into the break. And before we do that, though, I want to remind you, go to divinemercy.edu. That's their website. You can also go to my website at ihradio.com/Phil and find a link to Divine Mercy. I want to reinforce that the PsyD program, the PhD program, has been approved by a very, very important body called the American Psychological Association. These are legitimate courses that will help you to get to licensure, no matter where you are at the MS level, at the graduate level, no matter what state that you're in here in the United States. So I want to open the phones up. Also, Dr. Hollman will be with us in this last segment. Our number is 888 888-914-9149. Call if you have questions about the program. We'll be right back.
For all who long to see.
Advice and opinions heard on the Phil Sandoval Show are for educational purposes only. Now here's licensed marriage and family therapist Phil Sandoval.
Good morning, everybody. Listen, we have just so blessed to have Dr. Suzanne Hollman on the air with us. She is the dean, the director of the PhD program at Divine Mercy University. I'm going to talk to you more about that. I want to open the phones up. If you have questions about the graduate program, the master's program in counseling psychology or psychology, you can call in and ask questions. If you have questions about the PhD program, if you have questions about the university in general, now's the time to call. The number is 888-914-9149. Dr. Hollman's going to be with us for this last segment. Let me take a quick break here and also remind you that I'm hosting a journey to the shrines of Italy with Colette, traveling on the 11-day tour departing April 17th of next year, which is going to be here before you know it, from historic Rome to Assisi, Rome, Italy to Assisi, San Giovanni Rotondo, and then Campania. These are great sites, wonderful sites of historical interest. We'll celebrate daily Mass together. We'll attend the papal audience together. We'll receive the blessing of His Holiness Pope Francis together. You can find out more at Colette by phone 800-581-8942. When you call them, just mention the booking number. Here it is, 835726. But if you didn't catch any of that, you can go to my page at ihradio.com/Phil, and there's a link there to Colette Travel, to Colette, and you'll be able to get all of that information. Beautiful, beautiful. It's going to be here before you know it. We're going to be traveling before you know it. So there you go. That said, let's get back to Dr. and Professor Suzanne Hollman. She is with Divine Mercy University. And there's so many of you, I get questions, Professor, all the time from people about getting into psychology and counseling, and I encourage them to do that. But one thing that I like is I like to be able to tell people you didn't have to have an undergraduate degree in psychology. Let me ask, like you had said to us that some of the people in your PhD program are former lawyers. How does a diverse background in undergraduate studies help you to become a more effective counselor or a more effective psychologist?
I think it's important to remember that not all clients are the same, and so not all therapists should be the same. So we actually see diversity in our student body as a strength, not a weakness. And for that reason, we have an overview program. If you arrive without a degree in psychology from undergraduate, it's not a problem. You do a year-long online course while you're here that you have to pass, and it gives you a broad overview of a lot of the things that you may have missed out on if you don't have an undergraduate degree. And our students have responded very well to it, and we find that they catch up very quickly compared to the ones who do have majors in psychology. And they come with other strengths. We have priests who have spent years in the seminary. We have students with master's degrees in philosophy and theology with no psychology background. So they come with a different skill set. It's different. It's not worse. That's how we view it.
Yeah, it's interesting because we, of course, I direct people all the time. I said, ultimately, what you really need is your faith to keep you safe and protect you. But people get confused, they're saying, why would a priest go and get a degree in psychology? But there is something to psychology and science, isn't there, Dr. Hollman? The science is important to us, isn't it?
It's vitally important, and the way we see it is that from its inception, the Church has always embodied faith and reason. And so really what we're doing is not all that different from how we think of the Church over 2,000 years. We're just keeping current with what's going on, because as much as we want to hide from the world sometimes, those I just want to stay in bed kind of days, unfortunately, we don't believe that we've been called to do that. we have to live our faith within the world, and even though we don't always agree with what's going on around us, we view the science as another tool in our tool chest that we can use to help change the culture and to really heal the emotionally wounded. And there's probably not a single person listening to this today who don't know someone who is suffering, and that's what we aim to do.
Oh, it's a beautiful answer. I love it. Let's go to a call. We have Rick calling from Santa Maria. I think he has a call directly for you. Uh-oh. I accidentally deleted Dr. Hollman. That's my fault. So, Dr. Hollman, if you listen to me, call right back in. Rick, hold on for a second. We're going to get Dr. Hollman back on the air with us. But as that's happening, I want to remind you that the idea about science and faith going together is stuff of history. St. Thomas Aquinas, which by itself is a really wonderful university. But the idea that you're hearing Dr. Hollman talk to us about some of the people that are in her PhD program, that there's master's degree students that are coming from diverse backgrounds, including religious backgrounds, because the science of psychology is ever evolving. We know more about the brain, the neurology of the brain, the function of the brain than we ever have. We know more about certain types of mental illnesses that we've ever had. And as a result of that, for us to ignore science, secular science, would be wrong. It would be unethical for us. It would be unethical for us to ignore the research legitimate research that comes out of secular universities, and not incorporate them into our faith, into our, St. Paul. I think it was St. John Paul II who had said sometime back, somebody asked him a question about taking medicine. And I'm pretty sure it was John Paul II that said, of course you should take an aspirin when you have a headache. Because after all, it's God that gave us the science for that aspirin. The key with Divine Mercy University and the professors and this wonderful young woman that you're listening to now, who is the director of their PhD program, is telling you as it is. Neither one are mutually exclusive. It means that we can exist in this secular world, and we have an obligation to exist in the secular world. Dr. Hollman said it. Yeah, having faith doesn't mean staying in bed all day. Okay, it is really about making sure that we apply our faith in a way that helps people suffering, that our faith and science come together and we really do help people. Okay, that was my fault this time. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty getting Dr. Hollman back on. And that time it was my fault. But the idea that the MS program in psychology, let me go to Rick myself here. Hi, Rick from Santa Maria. Welcome to the show. What would you like to share? What question do you have for us?
Three related questions. One, if previous graduate counseling work classes would count for that program, and any kind of counseling work experience would be included. And if they have you said they have a master's degree program there. Is that psychological or counseling, or can you get a license for that? So those are three related.
Okay. Dr. Hollman, sorry, that was my fault there on hanging up on you. I warned those guys not to let me do that, but I did it anyway.
No problem.
We have a young man that just called, and he asked, he said, will his past experience in psychology, I think he has a master's degree in psychology, will that help him, his past experience in the psychological field and the counseling field, will that help him? Will he be able to use those credits to get into the PhD program?
Yes, we do transfer credits. We do it on a case-by-case basis. We have a very unique curriculum, and then APA requires us to adhere to certain curricular requirements. So some of it's out of our hands, but we've definitely have students with master's degrees, even master's degrees in theology, that we do transfer credits in. So what he would have to do is contact our admissions department. We'll have a look, and we definitely transfer credits all the time. And let me just
Okay.
clarify, it's a PsyD degree. It's not a PhD degree. It's a Doctor of Psychology, not a Doctor of Philosophy, just to clarify.
No, it's a good clarification. Thank you for that. So PsyD. Just while I was having you come back on the air, I was talking about you had made a really wonderful comment about, as people of faith, we have an obligation to look at the latest and greatest science. That reason and faith go hand in hand. I think that's very important. But with that, how do you think psychology is important to us in our day-to-day life? What do you think the mental health challenges are, for example, that we're facing and that we can address in this unique program of yours?
I think, to me, right now, the main threat to us is disconnectedness. I think the rapid proliferation of technology, without us necessarily being prepared for that, the texting, the Instagram, the Twitter, all of those are wonderful things and things I use too. But I sometimes think we over-rely on those quick ways of communication at the expense of building deep and lasting relationships. So that's the one area that I can see is communication. Having faith is a fundamental necessity as far as I'm concerned. However, psychology and counseling does give you a skill set that you have to learn. It's not that simple to just always know how to say things in a way that people can hear. So to me, that is the one very practical application. And then secondly, if we do look at the epidemic of our time, which is pornography use right now, I think that is an area that we're also looking at. There's a lot of people who have great faith who are in the clutches of things like addictions. Pornography, opioid addictions, we know is a big problem. So I think there's a way for psychology and counseling to inform both the milder forms of what we struggle with, but then also the very severe forms of things that we may struggle with, which is why we offer clinical psychology, which deals with the more severe forms of illness sometimes, but also counseling and the MS in psychology, which just informs us in a daily living perspective as well as perhaps sometimes the more severe forms. So whatever you're interested in, I think we have something for everyone.
Dr. Suzanne Hollman, that's who you're listening to. She is with Divine Mercy University. You're going to hear a lot more about that university from me over the next weeks and months that are coming. But go to the website, divinemercy.edu, divinemercy.edu, or go to my website. There's a link there on my website at ihradio.com that will link you to their site. Call, get information. I can assure you that there are people there that will answer every question that you have. Listen to the loveliness of this program. Be happy. Listen, I have to run. God bless you, brothers and sisters. We'll see you tomorrow, God willing.
See